Hi, everyone. Angela Bixby here, founder of this channel, Energy Intuit, and of my business, Energy Intuit. I'm a psychic medium, intuitive channel consciousness mentor. I help humans to expand through learning more about their intuition, deepening their intuition. Thanks for being here today. I thought I would record a quick video for everyone that comes out of a message and a question that one of my students had in a development circle for the Conscious Psychic program last night. It occurred to me that I've never really explained this to people why I set up the program, why I teach psychic development experientially through people having their own experiences versus using other modalities. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So I am doing this work as a second career. I'm really happy and passionate to have found this work. I was in healthcare sales and marketing. I landed in psychic school in 2010 at the age of 42, and I'm now 58. And so I trained for a year in a psychic school in New York, Holistic Studies Institute. And I hung a shingle in January of 11 and have been a reader and teaching psychic development ever since. I created the Conscious Psychic program in 2012. About a year later was when I created the program that I've been running now for 13 years and helping people in small groups experientially to expand their intuition, develop their intuition, their psychic skills in this way. So I'll start off with this one first. I do mediumship, connecting to passed on loved ones. And technically, the definition of mediumship is connecting to any of the unseen realms. So it's connecting to spirit guides, it's connecting to passed on loved ones, galactics, right? Angels, the energy, channeling energy from crystals and trees and all of those kinds of things. All of that is lumped into the subject of mediumship. And so many people associate mediumship with speaking specifically to passed on loved ones. So I'm speaking about the passed on loved ones part today in this video. The way that mediumship has been taught since the Fox sisters came over from England to the US in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and brought spiritualism to the US. The way that things were done then was with a lot of theatrics and drama. It was at a time when the consciousness was lower on the planet, and so those things were important for helping people believe that life carried on after we left our corporeal bodies here, after our souls left our bodies. And fast forward, well over 100 years, and we're in a different space and place with consciousness now. So we need less of that sort of dramatic evidence that used to come from table tipping and cabinet wrapping and ectoplasm that would show up, all of the theatrics and dramatics that came along with mediumship over 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago. And so there are a lot of schools that are still training mediumship in the ways that they've been doing it for that long. And I, as an empath and someone who's really sensitive, I never really felt that traditional mediumship teaching was for me, because if I were to open up to all of the different energies and passed on loved ones that a client is bringing with them to a session as an empath, that could really sort of clog up a lot of my channels. Having all of those passed on people around can make it harder to read. And so I've always done mediumship from a standpoint of I ask my clients to tell me who they would like to speak with, the first name of the person and what relationship they had to them. And then I call them in and I speak with them and then I release them. And so I already have been doing things differently in my business from how a lot of the mediums do in this field. And hey, the ways that people like to go to mediums are often not my style, right? They really like to go to more traditional mediums who do call in just anyone that's there in the absence of questions, a sort of more passive way of reading who's in the room. Whereas I don't necessarily let a lot of people in the room, so I go with my directive style and I call them in. And so if you're interested in the mediumship reading and you want it traditional style, definitely go to someone else because that's not so much the way that I do it. I do connect to passed on loved ones. I just do it in a very direct and tangible way, differently than others do. So I say that to say to you that I already do things in my own Angela way and always have. And it's part of why I'm self-employed and do the work that I do so that I can structure things the way that I do feel that they work best for humans. My guides are instrumental in all of this, and they work through me with all of the decisions that I make truly in my business. And it's been this way for a very long time. So fast forward to current times, and the student last night was talking to me and offering me a message of discussing sort of some of the traditional ways that psychic development is taught. So one of the many things, one of the many tools that are often incorporated, they're called Zenner cards, Zenner. And they're basically cards with different shapes and things on them. And you use them kind of like you would the match game with cards, where you flip them over and you look for the matching card. That's how the Zenner cards are used. And so the theory is that we can focus on the cards, the backside of them, and then tune into where that card's matches and test our psychic skills in that way. So that is one way. There, in workshops, I've done all of these kinds of things, right? Where I'll have people pair up and do an exercise where they send a fruit or a vegetable to someone, and I encourage them to incorporate all of like just ultra focus their brain on the taste, the smell, what it feels like in their mouth, what it feels like to hold it, the color, right? I have the one sender hyper focus on the qualities of, say, we'll say fruit, a pineapple, and then they're mentally sending it telepathically to their partner. And I've watched these kinds of things happen time and time and time again in workshops. So I do that one. There are a couple of other ones that I have done, and the reason I mean I use those skills in workshops, and they're fun. One of my favorite ones is I'll be focused on a picture, and then I'll be telepathically transmitting it to the students, and the students will then kind of sketch what's coming through. That last one that I just mentioned is going to come back around, so keep that one a little front of mind. So, my experience in teaching that way, this is what happens in using traditional psychic development tools. Humans are really hungry to grow their psychic skills, and our egos get in the way a lot. It's part of being human, right? There's a lot of personal work that we get to do when we're going to develop spiritually and psychically. We get to learn how to not take things personally. We get to learn how to understand what our influences are, what our lens is, what our filters are, like how we see the world and how that plays into our psychic reads of things and our associations with different things. So there's a lot of personal development work that goes part and parcel with developing psychically. And so a lot of times in workshops, what'll happen is people will start to engage in one of these experiences. And if they don't get things right off the bat, they get frustrated, they get upset, and they decide they're not psychic. And I see that as totally unnecessary. What I would say is it's more likely that this exercise is not the way that your intuition expresses itself. It isn't where you are naturally yet. You can develop to this, but it isn't really where you are naturally yet. So I've seen so many students get so incredibly discouraged. And that is the last thing that I would want, right? I teach all of this. I do this work with a lot of positive psychology and a lot of support and nourishment and a lot of focusing on positive tracks, positive brain states, positive neuroscience states, more so than tackling healing issues and problems and changing behavior, right? Like, can you feel the ease in the first pathway and the more of the obstacle and hard work laden in the second pathway, right? So that's how I teach this because there's so many different ways that we can experience our intuition and our psychic skills. So when people come into the conscious psychic program, I talk to them about how they naturally experience things. I say, have you seen things in dreams? Have you seen sparkles and lights and things in the air? Have you felt other people's emotions? Do you feel things in your physical body, right? I ask them about their experiences to understand a little bit how their skills are already coming through, whether they recognize it or not. And then I encourage people to grow those strengths from there. And then you can grow the other clairs and things, the other psychic skills out in tandem with those. And so start with your strengths and grow those, your natural strengths. And so if your natural strength isn't so much sending messages that are fruit oriented or receiving telepathic messages of a picture that someone is staring at and focusing upon, that doesn't mean that you're not psychic or that you're not intuitive. It just means that that isn't really how yours is expressing, and it's not how you're feeling that connection to your intuition yet. So the one that I described where we stare, I stare as the proctor, facilitator, teacher, mentor, etc. I stare at a piece of artwork or maybe a full color ad from a magazine is what I tend to use, those kinds of things, or from an article from a magazine. And I'll stare at it and I'll be transmitting it to the group. And then we'll end the exercise and I'll ask the group, okay, tell me about what you experienced, right? So people will start to go around the room and they will have picked up small elements of what I've sent, right? So it could be like a color, it could be a shape, it could be kind of a tone that's associated with this picture. More often than not, very few people get it right. I'm just going to say that. More often than not, what happens is, as we're in this experience, people start pulling in different things. So if I were staring at a picture of, say, a piece of artwork that's like a mosaic and there's an angel and sort of spiritual imagery, a lot of blue, a lot of white. And then people start going around and they're talking about island scenes with beach chairs and umbrella drinks and palm trees and feeling sand under their toes and hearing water, right? So people start sharing their experiences and they end up illustrating how our intuition can work because the majority of the group will have very similar imagery or things that they pulled through that they thought they were pulling from what I was focusing upon, but it was really just all of the collective energy in the room and they were all bouncing off each other and vibing off of each other. So they're very psychic. They just weren't, they simply weren't picking up what I was sending out. They were picking up more the vibe that everybody else was in. So it illustrates that we're all intuitive and we're all psychic. And I'm able to encourage people to stick with it because it's important for us not to look at these training tools and these ways that psychic skills can be taught, right? And we can do it ourselves with like guessing playing cards, take a deck of playing cards and sort of focus on, okay, which color am I going to flip next? You can focus on that red or black, right? There are a lot of different ways. You can tune in, don't look at a weather app and tune into what the weather's going to be in a certain city tomorrow, like tune in psychically and see, and then the next day check the weather in that city. Or you can ask Spirit to bring you a headline that might be in the news. You're still watching the news tomorrow, and then you check tomorrow after you've tuned into spirit to see what headline might come through and see if it pops up. So there are lots of different ways that we can do these things. And if you don't get it right, I don't want you to feel discouraged. I don't want you to stop developing because it isn't the only way at all to understand, experience, and grow our intuition. So I'm going to tell you one last thing from my training experiences that I think will also help really, really hit this home for people. So when I was in psychic school and the teacher did the staring at the piece of paper and transmitting it to all of us sort of telepathically, and then we had to sketch what we were picking up on, I ended up sketching a beach scene from where I went on my honeymoon back in what year did I get married? 1994. I'm long since divorced too. But I had a scene come through from my honeymoon of where my ex-husband and I went snorkeling on an island and went to a different beach every day. And so I sketched that and we went through the exercise and the teacher turned around the picture. And the picture that she had been focusing upon was an old-fashioned car, an antique car that had a just married sign on the back. And it had, strings and cans and streamers coming off the back. And it was on a big hill of grass. And so I looked at it first and thought, oh, I got that all wrong, right? Back in 2010. And then I went, wait a second. This shows me how my brain processes telepathic information because what she had been focusing on said just married, and I had come through a scene from my honeymoon, right? So this is the way my neurodiverse brain processed that information and brought it out to the paper as a very, very, very young and baby psychic at the time. So I share that with you to illustrate that don't give up and don't feel that if the tools that you're working with are sort of like rigid or either or binary parameters, try not to come into that and feel like you're right or wrong or you're not good at something and write it off. There are so many ways to experience your intuition so that you can understand how yours comes through. So now the Conscious Psychic program, and by the way, enrollment's open for the 2026 cohort. I would love to circle with you starting in January 12th, January 11th, when the program kicks off. Enrollment's open between now and January 7th, or until the program fills, whichever comes first. So the Conscious Psychic program is centered around experiential learning. The more that I can help get people into experiences where they're experiencing their intuition, I find that to be the most valuable teacher. And I'll tell you why. When we're sitting in a development circle, and that's the crux of the program, when everybody comes to circle at a certain time, we do it on Zoom audio because it forces people into their psychic skills, right? Without the visual cues on camera, without the distraction, on camera of Zoom, we're all on Zoom audio. So I lead them, I guide them through a grounding meditation, and then I open up the circle with some parameters. And there's a lot of guidelines that you get ahead of time before you show up. This is the short version for you all today on YouTube. We will start focusing on one person. We do one person at a time. We might go 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how much time we have, how many people are present in the circle, etc. So we're basically sitting in meditation and being in our psychic skills and focusing on pulling things through. When a new student is sitting there and they maybe in that space of reading someone, we'll say someone called Mary, and they feel a real subtle weight land in their lap. And then they start feeling this feeling of peace and maybe their heart opening up. And then maybe they sort of see a flutter or hear some wings, and they're receiving all of this through their experience of their intuition, and they're getting ready to start offering it to Mary. And another student says, Mary, I just had a dove of peace with a eucalyptus branch in its mouth land on the table in front of me, and I get the sense that you are entering a really peaceful phase of your life. The student that was already receiving things like that is going to go, holy smokes, I'm totally psychic and intuitive, right? Because that person just spoke the message that I was receiving. So through that experience of sitting in a circle and diving into your psychic skills and welcoming forth what's there for the person delivering it, having some discussion, hearing what other students are delivering, there is no faster way to skyrocket your confidence in your psychic skills and your abilities than that I have found. And so because of that, that is the best teacher. This isn't just people coming to a program saying, oh, I'm psychic because Angela told me I am. Oh, I'm psychic because I enrolled in Angela's program. No, they're having the experiences that show themselves that they are psychic in those moments in development circles. So those experiences are the better way to learn psychic development. I do the same thing with automatic writing and all different workshops that I run. When I'm guiding people through a meditation, it's okay if they go freeform and have a different experience and go somewhere else in these other realms, in the unseen realms. And then we come up and have discussion and things after them, because that process of having the experiences, speaking them into existence, sharing them with the group, being witnessed, and then having some dialogue around them to understand a little bit more about perhaps what we were experiencing and why, which is where I also come in with my wisdom and my mentorship as I help people make sense of kind of what's coming through and what it could suggest, while also leaving them to be the best decider of what it means for them. And the receiver ultimately is the best decider of what the message means for them. It gives people a lot of room to feel into how they perceive things psychically, and then also how they make those associations from those filters that we all have that comprise kind of who we are and how we filter the world through our experiences. I'll leave you with one last example of that because I've mentioned that a number of times and I don't want to leave anything unexplained here. When we think about something like an apple, so if I say to you that okay, if you see a red apple in a meditation, what kind of association do you make with that? When I ask this question in settings where people are here to respond, they'll say, it reminds me of original sin. It reminds me of health. And for me, it's reminds me of teachers because I have some extended family on the other side that are teachers. And then when they come through a lot, they'll show a red apple. And so that kind of association illustrates how differently we perceive different objects. And when faced with something like that, we get to dig in and ask questions of spirit in terms of what the apple means for the person. But it also just illustrates how many different associations there can be with one type of image. So there's a lot of depth in where people can go in developing their psychic skills and their intuitive skills. And I've just found by and large that playing a lot of those older taught psychic games can really be defeatist for a lot of people. And so I prefer to facilitate experiences for people to so that everybody can have a psychic experience and everybody's right, nobody's wrong, right? Because people are going to experience things differently. All right. Thank you so much. If you've been here and you're still here, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, I appreciate a subscribe. If you could muster that, please, or a like or an engagement, a comment with the video, share it with someone if you think it'll help them. This is one of those questions that, one of those ideas that was born from a development circle last night that I look forward to jumping on and recording more of these for you all to the end of helping people develop psychically in whatever ways that you may be, and really normalizing these skills for people. We are all psychic. It's a matter of figuring out how we perceive, working with our skills. We get more of what we focus on and expanding from there. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much for being here. Bye.